It might seem a little far-fetched that could happen, but with God all things are possible. So we're praying that abortion will be completely outlawed in the United States. And we've murdered, think about this, since Roe v. Wade here in the United States, we have murdered somewhere between 60 and 70 million babies since Roe v. Wade in 1973. We've done that with the assistance of the United States government. So, you ever thought about that? Adolf Hitler was responsible for what? The death of 6 million Jews? We're like 10, right? Here's another immature liberal over here. Another screamer. Can't use his brain, so he yells. Right? Can't use his brain, so he yells. Well, why don't you try to come have a conversation? It's not that hard. Come have a conversation. It's not that hard. Use your brain a little bit. You're an emotional child, right? Get a hold. Take some deep breaths, right? Breathe in. Like, here's how you do it. Look, you can bend over a little bit and then go like this. Go. You take a nice deep breath and stretch out your diaphragm. And guess what? Your heart rate will come down a little bit. Your blood pressure will come down a little bit. And then you can actually use your prefrontal cortex, right? You can use your rational brain. Right now you're experiencing amygdala hijack. Your limbic system has hijacked your mouth right now. But the good news is if you take a couple of breaths, right, your prefrontal cortex will kick in and you can actually use logic and reason. Instead of just being an emotion, instead of vomiting emotions all over the place. It's not that hard. Believe it or not, I have an above average IQ, but I'm not a genius. The reason why I seem so smart is because I take deep breaths, I use my prefrontal cortex, I don't use my amygdala, I don't use my limbic system, and I formulate my position around logic, reason, philosophy, historical data points, and evidence. It's really not that hard. Anybody who's, basically educated should be able to do that, right? It's not like rocket science. So yeah, we certainly encourage that. So we had another exhibit just there for those of you paying attention. I guess it's like exhibit F or G at this point, of a person who disagrees with me, who is completely hijacked by his emotions, and all he can do is like vomit F you and stuff rather than articulating any type of coherent case or point. So we've seen 7, 8, 9 examples of that this afternoon. Still waiting on example number 1, Exhibit A, in a person who disagrees with me and can use their big boy words, right? Use reason, evidence, logic, science, that sort of thing to formulate and articulate their points. So again, that challenge is open to anyone who wants to step up to the plate. Instead of yelling from across the road, step up to the plate. I'll turn the amp off, and I'll let you talk first. I'll let you talk first. I won't interrupt. I'll just have a few questions for you whenever you're finished. I think that's fair, right? That's certainly in the spirit of traditional debate, right? And what used to be known as the marketplace of ideas. But I'll take it. I'll take my wins however they come. It's kind of a forfeit when someone just yells F you or flips you off and drives off. That's kind of a forfeit, but I'll take that as a win. But the real win that I want is one that is based upon logic and evidence and reason and that sort of thing. Okay? So, still encouraging people to do that. As a former UGA professor, a UGA alum, I mentioned before, yes, I got my master's and PhD here. I taught here for 9 years. I left in 2015 to go to seminary after I left atheism, and now I just do full-time ministry. But I still like to encourage students to think, right? Even when I was an atheist professor here at UGA, here's what I told my honor students. I told my honor students, I said, if you finish 4 years at UGA, and you never have to deal with logic and reason and evidence in a situation where you disagree with that person, their views kind of step on your toes a little bit, and you have to engage that with your brain. If you get through 4 years here and that never happens, then the University of Georgia has done you a tremendous disservice, right? Because that's one of the pillars of classical education, being an educated person, being able to not just emote, right, but to reason and think and express your ideas in a constructive way. All right. So, yeah, praise God. Do a little time check here. So unborn human beings are human beings created in the image of God. It is therefore, ergo, it is morally impermissible to intentionally take the lives of unborn human babies. This is what the abortion industry does, right? Somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 4,000 times a day here in the United States. And so to this day, to this year, the United States murders upwards of 800,000 babies a year. 5 times as many black babies, by the way, are murdered in abortion as white babies. Talk about a racial disparity, an indiscrepancy. Now that's not just total number, that's per capita. In other words, when you control for the fact that African Americans make up, 13 or 14% of the population, there is still, when you control for the percentages, an unborn African American baby has 5 times the risk of being murdered in abortion in the United States here in 2020, as does a white child, right? So we just come out to just put a voice to what is obviously true, that abortion is murder. You know, everybody recognizes this, although a lot of people suppress that truth, just as Paul writes about in Romans chapter 1, suppress that obvious truth. Why? Because of unrighteousness. Because of unrighteousness, people will suppress the truth. Use your finger, not your brain, right? Another disappointment to the University of Georgia. All of these students who just flip you the bird, but they won't. They just obstinately refuse to try to use logic and reason and evidence to make their case. You know, what a disappointment. What a disappointment. You guys are tarnishing the image of the University of Georgia by your failure to use reason, logic, and evidence to make your case, right? You're a bunch of emotional children. Now, one of the hallmarks, as I was mentioning earlier, maybe you missed it, of classic liberal arts education is that you could disagree vehemently with someone, right? But you weren't hijacked by your emotions. You could explain why you disagreed with them. You would appeal to logic, reason, evidence, those sorts of things, rather than just flipping the bird and screaming. I call it emotional regurgitation. But that type of ability used to be considered the hallmark of a truly educated person. So by that standard, I'm going to submit to you that there are relatively few, there are some, but relatively and comparatively few truly educated students here at the University of Georgia. How are you?
Depends on where I'm at. Here, there's more negative than positive. If I'm up in Maysville or Commerce or Winder or a place like that. But,
You travel around.
yeah, quite a bit. Obviously, it's not very demographics of the area. So I would say, the same reason why people got together after George Floyd was killed, right? You had this whole area here in the middle. That was just one murder, and people, rightfully so. I mean, I disagree with the ideology of the organization BLM, so I didn't take part in that. But I understood their righteous indignation against his unlawful killing. Right? That resonated with me. So I would say it's very much for the same reason. It's just
Not
nobody
all received the same
right.
way.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really understand why they like. I don't understand why they see a difference between one person's death and the baby who could have been like a scientist or something.
Right. Yeah.
So what do you do that allows you to travel around?
I do full-time ministry, so I work. My wife and I help lead 2 groups here at UGA. There's one student organization called Ratio Christi, which is Apologetics and Evangelism Alliance.
I'm gonna write this
Yeah.
down. And also, I hope I didn't come off rude.
No, not at all. I welcome that. I mean, it's refreshing, honestly. Even if you did disagree, it's fine.
But at
You notice
least have a
even before I knew, I didn't know if we were going to disagree or agree. I try to take on something I was thinking along. I'm not here to yell.
Yeah, but it's really awesome. That's very problematic. I wouldn't expect it.
Yeah. Well, the other one I have is actually louder and clearer, but the battery doesn't last long. But the group is like Ratio, which is the same word ratio, like in math, RATIO, and then Christi, which is just Christ with an idea. We're pretty small, but we have about 12 students, I would say. We meet every Monday night at 7 and 8:30 in MLC, 251. And then we have just a group called Life on Life, which is a discipleship Bible study, small group on Thursdays.
What time on Thursdays?
Well, he was going 6. Now I think he was going 6:30. Now he's going 6. I believe it is room 271 of the Yeah. So you look under Life on Life, or you have Rashi Christian in there. Life on Life is pretty easy to remember. Either one should get a weapon. Yeah. Right. My name's Rich, by the way. Yeah, it's a good name.
Thank you. It was a coincidence. At the time, neither one of my parents were saying everyone assumes it's my nature. I mean, I appreciate I'm connected to
Yeah. It's kind of like a VA character, for martial arts series. Yeah. Right, yeah.
I mean, same way, like, here, public speaking, not a talent I have.
Yeah.
I'm more just I'll do, like, the accounting for the church and the ministry and
Okay,
stuff.
yeah.
I'm more of that.
Yeah. Are you involved in any student ministries here? Yeah. At the village there? Yeah. Have you checked out RUF on campus? Yeah. So, literally the R is for Reformed, like Reformed Universal Fellowship. And that's like theologically, that's where I am. I guess I'm not a Baptist, but if you wanted to put me in a particular camp, I would come out like Reformed Baptist in terms of what I believe.
Yeah, it's tough to say you're like a Baptist because people automatically like, oh, okay, it's not like that, guys. Like, it's the theology.
Right,
Do
yeah.
you ever listen to Live It Here?
Yeah, all the time. I have the RefNet app on my phone. I also listen to that, yeah.
I'm so sad you never see that.
Yeah.
I was really looking forward to it. At the time, I wasn't old enough to be able to like, I was looking forward to that when they died.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes. I say intellectual Christian, and then Hal Moeller is still alive. I listen to him pretty much every day. So, yeah, RefNet. My neighbors got to think I'm completely like the craziest person they ever met, which I understand. Because I'll be like working out and playing RefNet real loud. I mean, loud enough for them to hear.
I mean, that's one way to work out.
Yeah, well, and people feel free to ask us questions, you know. They kind kind of know where I stand. I have a sign in my yard, just has like a white background and a red heart.